I'm so excited for Rock the Country, 9 massive shows bringing country and rock legends to your hometown, featuring your co-headliners, Kid Rock and Nickelback, and so much more. Get passes and full details at rockthecountry.com. Today on the Rock Feed podcast, we're joined by a very special guest from one of the biggest bands on the planet and one of my favorites. Over 50 million records sold, and their new movie is out now on Netflix. This year, they're going to be bringing massive rock and country shows to small towns throughout the USA at Rock the Country alongside Kid Rock. I'm so excited to see them perform once again. Mike Kroeger of Nickelback, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to getting out there.
Yeah, it's awesome. And so one of the things I love about Rock the Country is that y'all are bringing these shows to really small towns that don't ordinarily get shows this epic. And I know you were raised in a very small town. So what does that mean to you to be able to do that?
I can't imagine what it would have been like to have something like what's coming, to these towns. If we would have had that in our town, I think it would have changed everything, maybe even for the better. We had a great ride and a good, good childhood and a good upbringing where we lived. But if a big rock festival like this just showed up out there in a field, it would be incredible.
I love it. And so the town you grew up in, I guess, was Hannah. It's like under 3,000.
Yeah. Yes.
Wow. So cool. And growing up, like, were there any shows near you at all that you got to go to? Like, do you remember the first show you went to?
I think it was either Motley Crue or Metallica was the first ones in sort of the early 90s, so I can't remember which one it was. I think it might have been Metallica on the And Justice for All tour, I think. But yeah,
that is a heck of a show to start out on.
Yes, left an impact. I'll never forget it. Whether it was our first or not, I'm not sure about, but I remember it vividly.
Was that, who were some of the bands that really inspired you and Chad to kind of pick up the instruments and start this band that went on to do such amazing things as well?
Well, the Metallica connection is really deep for us. That band did and does mean a lot to us still. Guns N' Roses obviously was changing everything, and all the kind of like hair metal kind of bands, like Motley Crue, etc. They were, really important in our upbringing as well. But we were listening to all kinds of things. We were listening to Beastie Boys and Run DMC and wherever we would. Whenever we would go to one of the bars in Hannah, believe it or not, there was more than one. There would always be a lot of country playing. So we grew up with country in our lives for sure.
And it makes total sense. And obviously so many country fans love Nickelback as well. And that's one of the things I love about this lineup with Rock the Country. I've always felt like you really have this massive crossover between hard rock and country that kind of goes unspoken. So I think this lineup is just incredible. I mean, what's it mean to be playing shows with bands like Lynyrd Skynyrd, man?
Well, ever since we started trying out things with the sort of new breed of country, we've we just gave it a shot because our management team is deep in that world, and we have a lot of friends who are in the new country movement, I would call it. And we decided to try it out and just see what happens. We do a show with those people, and you get up there and you look out and it's all the same awesome people, so it's a good connection because I believe that, their fans are already our fans and our fans are their fans. So it's a real nice fit.
Couldn't agree more. And I also say, going back to the very beginning, I've seen you up on stage wearing that cowboy hat and, y'all really have those small town roots. That's for sure. And one of the things that I've always respected about Nickelback that is so cool is from the very beginning, despite the fact that you all went on to become this iconic rock band, you really had very humble beginnings. And, the band, y'all just grinded it out, it seems like. And from you were going around and passing out demo CDs to the local record stores, can you talk about kind of how the band really, for years before you guys really broke out, how you guys were grinding to make this dream happen?
Yeah, you may be aware from watching our documentary, which you should definitely, if you haven't seen it, it'll answer a lot of questions you might have about our group if you do have any questions, that is. Yeah, we kind of learned early on that no one has more to gain or lose in your music career than yourselves. And so we decided that, well, we figured it out that this is a DIY situation, and if you wait for somebody else to do all your work, you're going to be waiting a long time. So we knew we had to grab the bull by the horns, so to speak, and do the work ourselves, and so we did. We learned how everything worked with radio, with distribution, with promotion, with touring. We learned how to do everything ourselves. We had some managers helping us in the beginning. They were new too, so we were all kind of learning and figuring it out. On our own in the beginning. It was kind of like learning on the job for the first many years. But when it's your business, you pay attention, you learn fast. You have your mistakes, and you learn from them and move forward. It's no different than any other small business, except that far more of these small businesses fail than your average small business. So there was more than a few times when things were tough, and we probably wouldn't have needed a whole bunch of encouragement to quit. There's plenty of opportunities to quit and lots of really good reasons to quit when you're doing this, but we didn't really know anything else, so we just kept hammering, and luckily my plan came to fruition when my brother learned how to write hit songs. And that's when people ask me sort of what's your best advice to young musicians. Yeah, just have a guy who writes hits. It's really great.
Right. It certainly makes things a lot easier. And y'all have a mountain of hits in your career. Talking about, you're Chad's big brother, and y'all are family, and you've gone on to have such a successful career. It doesn't always work out where, family members can be in a band and be as successful as you have for so long. What do you think the secret is for y'all's success, where Nickelback has just been on fire for all these years, and y'all as brothers have just maintained such a great relationship in the band?
Well, I mean, it had its challenges. We've had our challenges. The relationship is challenged in any, kind of situation like this where there's pressure and expectations weighing down on everybody. And, situations get pressurized. You have your arguments, and being brothers, we have arguments to begin with. So, definitely, we had our time when, things might have been, rougher than others, but, there was never any, there's never any question that we were going to keep moving forward. You have your disagreements, you work them out, you keep going. It's kind of a blessing to be in a band with family and close friends, because you don't turn your back on them. You stick it out better and longer with your family than you would with strangers. Strangers are pretty easy to turn the page on.
I love that. And, speaking of country, they say that, Nashville, for instance, is a 10-year town. And, how long did it take for Nickelback? Because I know y'all were out there for a while, really grinding before the band actually took off. It wasn't like it just happened overnight per se.
No, it was sort of an what do you call it? Overnight success, 6-7 years in the making, maybe 10, I don't know. Yeah, it was, there was plenty of, nobody gets to see the sort of sitting on the side of the road with a broke down van, on our way to a half sold out show at a club. It's, we used to call them character builders, and we did a lot of character building out there, a lot.
Absolutely. And that's for sure. And so, you guys get signed, you end up signing to Roadrunner, which is, this legendary metal label. And
Yeah.
and then y'all were kind of the outsiders as this big rock band. You go on to have this massive success. You end up releasing, and this is so interesting because a lot of people I don't think have appreciation for the amount of pressure that artists are put under. You get this major label deal, and well, I don't, at the time, I guess they weren't per se a major label, but you get this big label deal and they've invested a lot in you. And then you go on and you put The State out, which I love that. I love that record, but it didn't commercially perform at first as well as maybe the expectation was. And how do you kind of, deal with that pressure when things don't take off as anticipated early on?
Yeah, you know that whole thing of expectations is very very relative, because yes, we did release the state, and we made a little bit of noise with Leader of Men and things like that.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, the industry or your people or whatever you call it, everybody wants you to get out there and sort of take another step forward and kind of improve upon what you've already done. And sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't. um Moving forward, when we released uh Silver Side Up, that popped off, and everybody's like, well, now with the subsequent albums, they're like, it's pretty normal to have a decline in your
Yes.
whatever. And you know Long Road came out after Silver Side Up, and it was like, okay, guys, well, just don't worry. This is where your career goes down. And we're like, okay, and then and it was a failure of something like selling like 3, 4, 5 million copies in the United States. So it's like. It's the kind of failure you got to deal with, and then I still can't believe it, but we got under the bite at the apple when we released All the Right Reasons, and had 7 of those tracks, I believe, went to number 1, on that record. So it was sort of that one, that weird second chance, we got, which I can't explain it, but I'm really happy it happened.
I mean, I remember when Silver Side Up came out, the first time I hear How You Remind Me, and to this day it's such a timeless classic, as is of course All the Right Reasons. But at the same time, you have Chad coming out with the solo single Hero.
Yeah.
Also, I think that's one of the greatest action movie like soundtrack songs ever made. I in constant rotation. I still listen to all of this stuff all the time. And when All the Right Reasons, I'm sorry, when How You Remind Me just takes off after you guys have been grinding for so long, what does that feel like to see, that kind of success and the legacy that song has continued to carry on years later?
Well, in the very beginning, um, it was kind of hard to understand because we released that album on September 11th, 2001. So
Wow.
that was uh we didn't even realize we had our album released until the afternoon that day because of all the other things that were going on that day. That was a really hard day for a lot of people, and including us. But we later that day realized that we did have a new album out, and that it was really, in spite of everything, that the people were going to it, and they were enjoying it, and the song had already started to perform at radio, and so it was a really really nice surprise, to see the single perform well, and to see people go to the album, especially under those circumstances, was really awesome.
And I got to tell you, when it comes to Nickelback's live show, I've seen y'all all over the US, and I'm going to see you multiple times this year as well. Man, y'all bring the intensity live, and so many artists have so much respect for your live show as well, because y'all just, it's like almost overwhelming. So much pyro and all of that. Can you talk about how y'all developed your live show, and, kind of y'all always been sort of a real live band where things just gel so well?
Yeah, going back to the time before we had any kind of budgetary fund, where we could actually spend money on kind of effects and stuff like that. We decided early that Nickelback needed to be a formidable live group, and we had to be able to do as well or better live than our albums, and that was just critically important to us. We really realized that to be a great rock band, you have to be good live. There's enough groups who can they can write great songs, they can record great albums, but when it's time to play live, they don't have the stuff for that. And we never wanted to be that. I remember, coming up, in the days early, long before Nickelback, I remember coming up in this sort of like, kind of like harder punk rock hardcore world, and there would be these awesome hardcore groups, or punk rock groups that would come through, uh, very rarely where, they never came where we live, but, if you went into Calgary, you might be able to catch something. Nirvana actually toured through there on the Bleach tour when they were playing
Wow.
almost empty clubs and stuff. So there was a possibility that you might see something, but I remember, seeing and hearing, about these hardcore groups that I really loved that were great albums, great songs, but they sucked live, and I never wanted to be that, I wanted, if you get, you just want to get yourself to a place of undeniability where it's like, yeah, they might not love your band. They might not be their favorite band, but they have to admit that you're good live just because you just are,
Yep.
that it's not really, you try to make it as, move it away from being debatable.
And you certainly have. And, you look back and one of the things that I really love is you guys were really tight with the Abbott brothers, weren't you? That is so cool. How did you come to know them?
Uh, in the beginning, we had some crew on our team that we had onboarded, including our pyro guy, our best buddy, Stephen Joseph. He was Pantera's fire guy when, we had seen them live long before we were thinking about doing anything like this. Steve was back there, blowing stuff up for the Pantera guys.
Hell yeah.
And so when we onboarded him to our camp and some other people who were familiar with the Pantera, group and the Abbott brothers, we started to see them whenever we come through Dallas. They would turn up and try to drink us into submission and yeah, I don't know if you've seen the Pantera videos, like
Yep.
yeah, there's a couple of times where I realized that I was about to be that guy who was going to be passing out or vomiting on camera, or just saying something ridiculous. So I ran away a couple of times. It's just because I realized I was getting in deep water, especially when Dime started pouring those Blacktooth Grin drinks. Uh, they go down so good, and after a little while, your legs don't work anymore, and then that's when the fun starts. And so I beat a hasty retreat a couple of times. Unfortunately, that's the last time I saw Dime was when I was running away from him when he was trying to over medicate me. So it's great.
And I think for the Abbott brothers as well, and the live show that they put on. I mean, I'm sure the live show that y'all put on too is just so good, and I'm so looking forward to seeing y'all at Rock the Country this year. And I think it's interesting too when a band blows up to the level that Nickelback does, and it's always interesting with band names. Like it could be any name, and I heard that Nickelback. Is it true that this name came from? Did you used to work at Starbucks, or is this fake?
No, that's a real thing. Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool.
And a big part of my life was spent working with them, and I learned a lot working with them, and I also realized I just really like their coffee.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, when you're out there on the road and, everybody's partying hard at times, it can be sort of an unhealthy lifestyle. And I noticed that you're wearing this Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu shirt.
Mm.
And I've seen, that you're very into that. And it's a discipline that I have so much respect for. How did you get into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? I know a lot of musicians are really into that, and it's benefited them greatly.
It was actually had a CrossFit coach who invited me to check out Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and the first time I stepped on the mat and experienced it, I was hooked right away. And that was after I got tenderized by a CrossFit workout. It's terrible. So I was already pretty banged up, and then I went in there and got it handed to me for an hour and a half. And it became, it instantly became a part of my life. It's hard to explain, but you get to know people better than even some of your closest friends and family, by sort of suffering with them and learning and working and evolving with these people. It's a different kind of friendship. These aren't people I call every day or I see every day, but when I do see them on the mats, it's a special bond.
That's incredible. And, when it comes to being out there on the road, do you think that bands really need to have something like that where they're every day kind of working out, or is they're going to run into problems if they're not having a healthy lifestyle?
It seems like it's no different than the people who aren't in bands, on tour. Some people want to do it, and some people don't want to do it, and there's differing kind of opinions on what's the better way. My belief is that the amount of suffering we're going to endure in this life is fairly finite. It's just how you're going to have it. Are you going to, are you going to have a long, slow illness, or are you going to hopefully stay healthy and live actively until you're done? I choose to put the time in, and I'll do my suffering in the gym so I don't have to do it in the hospital.
Man, I couldn't agree more. And, talking about health and wellness, I didn't know this until, first of all, your documentary, man. I want you to know this. I'm not saying this lightly. I put it up there with some kind of monster. Anybody who is watching this, man, who has seen this documentary, y'all were so real in this documentary. It's so well done. It's on Netflix now. World class. I've watched it multiple times, including again last night. So excited to talk to you. And what I didn't know is that you experienced, I guess it didn't say specifically. It seems like you may have had a stroke or something. And man, at 40 years old, and I cannot imagine, can you talk a little bit about that? And I didn't realize you had to learn to walk again. And man, my heart went out to you, and how impressive it is to see where you're at right now. You never would have even been able to tell.
It was a huge evolution for me to experience that. And yes, it was a major stroke, just short of mortal. Apparent, obviously still here, and most of me came back from it. But it was really good. And yeah, when you have an event like that happen, you kind of got to reestablish daily skills, and that was pretty interesting. You tend to take things for granted that you're going to be able to get up when you want to get up, and then you have one of these things and you get a little paralyzed, and get a little blind, and you realize that sometimes life's not in your control.
And you live to see your band become absolute rock superstars to this day, and then you have this horrible medical emergency. And I know people who've had strokes or TIAs or whatever, and I know this was a major stroke. How does that change your perspective on things, man? Because I'm so glad you're still here.
It really, I mean, what I truly learned, you hear people sometimes say they learn what's truly important when they do something like that or have something like that happen. To me, it made me realize what wasn't important.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A lot of stuff that I would get stressed about or dwell on or whatever, it's just sort of stuff. And I've kind of adopted a more of a so what attitude to life now. That, when there's so much noise in life today, and if you just take so what into the arena with you, it's amazing, because when you hair on fire, I'm scared of this, I'm scared of that. So what? What are you going to do about it? Can you do anything about it? No. Let it go.
Yeah.
If you can do something about it, you should do something about it. But a lot of my time is spent worrying about things that I can't control. And
Yep.
that was kind of we still don't even know what happened to me as far as why I had a stroke. I've had doctors looking for it for over 10 years, and they still haven't found it yet. But one thing that, I was given in the beginning was stress. And so I'm learning how to manage that now.
I'm going to tell you, man, that is, I can't even tell you how inspiring that is, that you push forward. What year was that happened?
That was 2014. June 23rd, 2014. And it was 2 days shy of my 42nd birthday. And I spent that birthday in intensive care with all the hoses and tubes, and not a real rosy outlook It was one of those things where my wife was there and every day asking the doctors if I was going to survive, and because they don't want to instill false hope, they weren't able to answer that question. Even as they were wheeling me out of the hospital 10 days, 2 weeks later, whatever it was, she asked if I was going to survive, and they they didn't say yes or no. It's of course they can't.
Right.
Nobody can make those kind of guarantees, but it sure is something my wife wanted to hear. And so far, so good. I got 10 extra years, and I feel like I'm on sort of like bonus time, fun time now. And I just honestly, I just don't give a shit anymore.
I just, man, I mean, I already respected the band so much, but you as a person to have gone through that and then keep focusing on your health as well is just absolutely so incredible. And, so when you look at your career, y'all have had so many amazing moments, and I know you're a true music fan at your core, as so many artists are. Is there any moment when you look back, and I'm sure there are so many, but is there a moment that stands out to you when you look back on your career where you're like, man, I can't believe that happened?
Those things are still happening, to be honest with you.
Love it.
It's most um profound to me, because to me playing live is the be all and the end all in this thing. So the real moment when it happens, and like I say, it happens all the time, and it just happened recently. We went and played this gig in Scottsdale at the Bird's Nest at the Waste Management Phoenix Open, and when we walked out on stage, there it was again, thousands of people just having a blast,
Yep.
and they want to include us in their plans. And it just feels great to walk out on stage, whether you're I remember the first time when we walked out on stage in Japan. You're like, I don't know if you've been to Japan before, but it's another world. It's not like here. It's really, really different. When you get off the plane, there is a few hours, maybe days, where you're like, this uh, is awesome, and it's nothing like what I'm used to. So to see all that, and to live there for a few days, and then go on stage, and then they pull the curtains back and you look out there, and there's this Tokyo audience is getting ready to tear that place down for you. They just were, that, or whether it's Australia, or whether it's Africa, or whether it's like whatever, you go to these places, and they're excited you're dropping by. Feels good. So yeah, there's it continues to this day. There's not one particular event more than any other. It's just we're in a blessed space, sir.
Man, I love that. I love that so much. And you can really tell the people who are, and I also think, there's probably no way that a band, any band really, but even Nickelback, like you don't get to where you are unless there's an element of truly loving the genre and appreciating it and putting on the type of live show you do. You can tell, is there live bands that you look at that you're like, when you guys were coming up, like, man, if we could just get in the level of what they're doing and put on a show like that, is there any inspiration there?
For sure. I mean, back in our day when we would see these shows, it would be Metallica live, it would be Poison live, it would be Motley Crue live, it would be Tesla live. Like we were just kids sitting in the audience watching this happen, going, this is awesome. But I think those are just guys down there. They're just people. Like, I think we might be able to do that too. It's a fairly audacious plan. But we were just like, oh yeah, they're just guys, especially like the Metallica guys, watching them play, and understanding that, not that long prior, 15 years prior, they were nobodies. And then we see them and they're playing into sold out arenas. It's like one of those things where you go, hmm, I think that this can be done. We got to get our songs together and get to work. But maybe this is something that's possible. And we were reflecting back on that, because of the time we were sitting in there watching them, we hadn't even begun to play yet. So but we were reflecting on that experience of sitting in the audience watching, whichever one of those bands do the thing, and realize that, yeah, they just worked really hard. and wrote songs to the best of their ability and practice and practice and practice and played every gig they could get their hands on, and then hopefully one day it breaks through, and people are inviting you to come and play instead of you just showing up and playing. And hey, here we are. That we did plenty of that. Played to a lot of wait staff. Played to a lot of single digit inhabited rooms.
Man, when and you said earlier, like, there's so many reasons to quit. And, how do you deal with so early in your career? Obviously it's very different now. Like at Rock the Country, these crowds are going to be insanely big. But how do you come out so early in your career and you don't know what lies ahead of you, and what motivates you to keep going when you're playing, like you said, for wait staff only? That's got to be tough.
Well, lucky for us, we didn't have a real big A plan going into this. You know what I mean? This was plan A through like Z. This is what we were going to do. So it was going to take a lot of um, a lot of resistance before my brother was going to give up. And it was going to take a lot of resistance before any of us was going to give up. So we were just going to keep um, bashing on the wall until we broke through it. So it wasn't, maybe it wasn't logical. Probably not. And there's, like I say, I told you, plenty of opportunities to quit. There's a lot of suck moments in this ride where you feel like everything's going wrong, nothing's working out, or you see a big break and you do you go through the opportunity of that big break and nothing comes of it, when you think it might be the thing. And really the overarching kind of sentiment was, where we were raised is a very blue collar place where
Yeah.
people go to work. Whether they're in the farms or they work in a coal mine or they work in the power plant, whatever it is, they get to work. You go and nobody's going to do it for you, and it's not going to do itself. And so we just put our heads down and just kept hammering, and luckily, I think people more than anything just gave up. Like we just yeah, we just showed them that we were never going to stop, so they might as well just get on the bus and shut up, because you're never going to quit. So jump in or get out of the way.
Yeah, and I mean, it certainly doesn't hurt when you're releasing just some of the most iconic songs of the last 30 years. And, you know, obviously with Chad being your brother, and you talked about his songwriting acumen earlier, and, watching him develop that skill, when you start out, like with anything, I'm sure you're not that great immediately, but, as he develops that, you know, what was it like seeing that kind of come out of him? Like, whoa, dude, like that's a monster hook. So many of his songs, some of the most over the top hooks I've ever heard came from y'all. I mean, what was that like seeing that firsthand?
I don't think any of us knew that that was what he was doing. I don't think he knew that that was what he was doing in the beginning. Um, because a lot of it in the beginning was very organic, and it seemed, there's a moment in the documentary where Chad is running through the main riff of How You Remind Me, just playing it over and over and over and over. And that's not a reenactment. That was the day that that song started to flow through my brother. And I watched that. And he described it, and has described it since, as more of a channeling kind of situation than a creative one. He kind of feels like he was a conduit, and that kind of just, whatever inspiration or however you want to, whatever you want to call it, it came to him, and he was an open vessel ready to accept. And that scene, we're in a rehearsal space in Vancouver, and he just started playing that around and around and around and around. And like I say, I don't think we really knew what we were watching happen. And again, I don't think he did either. So as that started to take shape, it was more like um, we were just trying to hold on to it and not lose it. So we wrote that song very, very quickly in that jam space, and we worked really hard on it until it was at some place of completion, which again, we didn't know what that was either. Yeah. And then he became very much a student of the game of songwriting. He wanted to explore and learn why certain chord progressions are used repeatedly, why certain vocal patterns are used, and sort of, some of the devices used in songwriting to create that tension and release. And so he kind of took himself to school on it. And I didn't know what he was doing. You know, in the beginning, I didn't know what he was doing. I've never really been that prolific songwriter. I'm not the one who writes the pop chorus. You know, I don't do that, or I haven't done that. You know, Chad's been doing more than enough of that for all of us. And so we didn't really know what was going on until we started to see repeatedly again and again the people hear the songs and then instantly want to attach themselves to the songs and you know, sense that familiarity. And we started to learn that we had a once in a generation songwriter in our band. What a nice surprise.
Seriously. And I mean, you really, really do. And these are songs that, like, the first time you hear How You Remind Me, you know it's a hit. Like, the first time you hear that song, it's just like, whoa. Same with Rockstar. I mean, you know, Photograph. You know, when with songs like Rockstar, were there any tracks from your discography that after you recorded in the studio, you're like, okay, that's a hit? Is there any of them that were like, okay, I'm not surprised by that one?
So we had a rule very early on that we would never use the H word.
Ooh, okay.
Um, as a matter of more superstition than anything else.
Sure.
You know, there's this concept of if you call something a hit, it's a jinx, and you know, there's also a kind of a presumptive nature to that too. You know,
Sure.
it's like, you know, somebody jumping up on a soapbox talking about how great they are. We don't really do a lot of that. You know, we prefer to let the music do the talking and let the live show do the talking, and people like yourself, you know, you decide. You know, you tell us who we are and what we are and what we're doing and if it's working or if it's successful. But we're just going to keep doing what we do, and you know, everybody's going to have their opinion of what we do. Some positive, some negative, mostly probably ambivalent, and that's fine. You know, we're good like that. And people can say positive things, they can say negative things, as long as they keep buying the concert tickets. That's all that matters to us.
Well, I'll tell you what, they sure as hell are buying the concert tickets, and we have Rock the Country with these 10 massive shows happening this year, and it's kicking off in April in Louisiana. Now, is there anything that you can share about what fans can expect in addition to Rock the Country going forward for Nickelback? Just me personally as a fan, I'm excited. Whatever you guys have coming up.
We are, although it looks like a DIY sort of, like a poster child for DIY, and like we know what we're doing all the time. We don't know what we're doing all the time. And right now, we are not sure exactly what is next. We're talking about getting in the studio and recording, but we're trying to come with some kind of a different idea than just, you know, write an album, record an album, go on the road, repeat cycle. We're trying to come with something a little bit different. And, you know, being that we've got 10 albums, you know, out there, we're kind of just pumping the brakes a little bit and just, you know, there's no hurry.
Yeah.
There's no hurry. We're going to do it when it feels right and not before. And the same thing, it goes to when we release things. We made a rule a long time ago that, you know, we have a choice to release an album on time or an album when it's ready, and we've always chosen to release the album when it's ready. Rushing something half-hearted or half-baked is not going to happen with this group.
I love that. And it's so, you said, you know, there's not like, it's not something that you guys have really meticulously planned. And in the documentary, I thought that was funny. It's like you and Chad shooting pool and you're like, bro, like, what do you think we should do next? And I'm like, wow, they really are that kind of like, just, you know, let's see what we want to do next. And I think that's really cool. And, you know, what are your thoughts on, you know, you guys have put out many albums. Are you thinking about maybe going to what so many artists are doing? And I think, for the selfish fan in me, I think you probably get music with more frequency this way, and maybe the artist is able to focus more. But what do you think of kind of the singles model as opposed to the album release?
This is this is exactly where we are. Like you were talking about that moment where we're shooting pool. What's next? What are we gonna do? That's where we are now. We're just
I'm
not
down
standing
with that.
around a pool table. That's the only difference is there's no pool table. But aside from that, we're at the same. What the hell are we going to do next part here? And we're still trying to figure that out. So, as much as I'd love to tell you, it's going to be as much a surprise for us as it is for everybody else because we still haven't decided yet.
I love it. Now, Mike, I just want to say, man, I am such a fan of Nickelback. I have wanted to have you on the podcast for so long, man. It was an honor to have you here. Rock the country. I am looking forward. I'm going to have to come to multiple of these. I cannot wait to see you play live, man. Thank you so much for joining me today. It really means a lot.
Thank you. Thanks for taking the time out to talk to me.
Please, man. You're welcome anytime here. Anytime you want to come on, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, my brother.
Thank you, brother.